Capcom must be making bank. It has to be.
Maybe it costs them millions of dollars and it's not worth it. We don't know.
But that's different because Marvel is the best fighting game ever made.
That's a core issue that you might not be able to overlook unless you're like a real dedicated player.
Yeah, exactly. I'm part of the problem.
I'm sorry. The main game mode is Ryu versus Ken, fight.
You say tier enthusiast. You know, I was an old player. It's tier.
All right, how do I bring this in? I never know how you start these things.
You just say like, hey, dude, we're in another episode of Extra Trashy. And you know what? We have some super trash. We've been scrolling through the trash can with something. We found something even worse in your common trash.
Hey, what's going on? We're back with another episode of Extra Trashy. We found something even worse. It's super trashy. We've been scrubbing through your comments and we found the trashiest takes possible, but we're not doing that. That's not too bad of a. I was kind of working it right there. We'll have to save that for when we actually go through the comments. That would be a good segment. People have been asking for segments on this show. We haven't formalized it enough to get to that point, but I guess we'll segue into it now. Yes, this is another episode of Extra Trashy, featuring, of course, my unofficial co-host Idom. Thanks again for hopping on extremely last second to save the show. Appreciate it.
No problem. No problem. Just here chatting it up.
For sure. And we have some interesting topics to get into. I think the first one is relevant to those following the competitive community, but it goes a little bit beyond that. We just recently had Momochi winning Japan World Warrior number 5, the final World Warrior event for the Japanese region. Even though he won that, it's big because he won with Ed, who was just like the recently nerfed character in the 2.5 balance patch. He was like just 2+ pages of like nerfs on nerfs on nerfs. But him winning didn't really matter because actually who qualified was Kakeru, and he qualified by going back to JP, the other character nerfed in season 2 that he had dropped because he was hopping between Akuma and Bison. You know, he was definitely doing a little bit of he was being a tier enthusiast for sure after season 2 happened. But he decided to stick with the JP, and he managed to outplace Higuchi. Higuchi and Kakeru were tied in points going into this, but because he outplaced Higuchi dropped down to losers in like top 64 and then was eliminated in 4th place by Goichi, and Kakeru made it to winners finals. That means that he, by default, had the most points and qualified via the auto qualifier. He's home free. Momochi ends up taking the tournament. Kakeru ends up getting 2nd place. But yeah, it's interesting to see how the two biggest targets for nerfs, I would say the biggest, right? Both JP and Ed, I believe, were the most nerf characters in both balance patches. And they are top 1 and top 2 in the most stacked tournament in the most stacked region. Over 750 entrants in that World Warrior tournament, by the way. Japan pulls insane numbers for these events. So it goes to show that maybe the McDonald's memes weren't too accurate. I don't know.
Yeah, Ed got the motive, but he's not working at McDonald's yet. I mean, he's still a good character. It's just like, I feel like with the Ed changes, they were good, but even watching through the matches, like, you know, he's still doing the dream combo, he's still corner carrying you, the damage is the same. There's nothing different with the whole game plan, but I guess if you're abusing like flicker, the backstep kill rush, and you're getting DI'd now, then I can see it getting a little bit annoying, but like the game plan's still there.
Yeah, it definitely is still there. And even what was interesting with one of the moments in the tournament, there's a moment in, I believe it was grand finals or winners finals. It was Momochi versus Kakeru. He does a string into flicker, like a medium kick into flicker with Ed. And now the meta is, anytime you see a cancel the flicker, just press DI, because even if they do the kill rush back, the backdash, the DI will reach because of the extended hurt box, and you'll pretty much always get at least a guaranteed DI hit. You won't get a crumple, you're just going to at least a hit, even if he command dashes out of the way. But then the situation comes up again, and Momochi, on reaction, cancels into level 3. So he saved using the buffers into flicker for when he had level 3. And, you know, all the players have trained their reactions now to always automatically DI because the mix-up is gone. And he used that against Kakeru, like that new autopilot behavior he trained. He then found the next layer for it and then used the level 3. So I thought that was like really interesting, like kind of emblematic of this whole rat race in terms of like the meta evolving. Like, yeah, you nerf my character, you learn counterplay to take advantage of the nerfs, but then I immediately use that against you by having the next layer ready. So yeah, it was interesting to see how fast they evolved in the face of nerfs like that, which I think players do all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep adapting. That's the beauty of like fighting games. Like there's always going to be buffs and nerfs. There's always going to be balance patches, whether they're fast or slow. There's always going to be something happening. So even to be able to stay on top of your characters and like adapt to the ed changes, just shows how good Momochi is. He's been playing since Street Fighter 4. He'll be all right.
Right.
I feel like. The cool thing I thought with the Japan World War was Narikun getting top 8 with Kimberly. I always say there's one Kimberly that slips by every bracket, and like there's always one Kimberly sneaking in the top 8. Glad Narikun able to use the Kimberly buffs because like she's a cool character. I like the way like she can kind of rush down with the bomb mix-ups and strike throw, and then bomb gives like a whole nother combo. I do think the run buff is a little bit kind of messy. I think there's a weird way to buffer, but I'm glad Narukun got top 8. It's sick to see.
He not only got top 8, he played like a real pivotal role. He was like the monkey wrench in the whole qualification process because he's the one who put Higuchi into losers in top 64. And Narukun, if you guys aren't familiar with him, he's always kind of been like, I don't know, like Daigo's little brother. Like there's like this whole perception of his persona where it's like he's not quite in the club with like his peers. He hangs out with them. He plays with all these top level players in Japan, but he's always been like right below them in terms of like consistency. Even though over the years he's gotten more and more consistent wins over the players of that caliber. And so this event was like another one of those. He had like a few good runs. I think in season 1, he took out like Shanghai at some tournaments. So he had some good offline showings. And I think maybe a premier top 16 or something like that. So he's had some good showings in Street Fighter 6 for sure. But yeah, he was the monkey wrench, right? He put Higuchi into losers. This was the tournament where it's the race between Kakeru and Higuchi. And then at the end, Higuchi actually got the run back last game, the last round against Narikun. And like a crazy scramble where Narikun did like a whiff light punch, drive rush cancel, raw in neutral into a whiff level 3, and then just like he self-exploded. there was a weird implosion that happened, and he just lost. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's the Narikun, right? It's like he played so good for so long, and at the end he has to explode to like his brain couldn't handle what was going on. But he had a really cool run utilizing the Kimberly buffs. But what about Kakeru, man? Back to the JP. He even tweeted out before that event. He had a tweet where he was number 1 ranked in MR again, and he said, "I'm back."
Was the number 1 MR with JP?
No, in the world. In the world.
No. I meant like was the character with JP?
Yes, he made the announcement. It was like the formal announcement leading into this event because he won an event and got second. And he's been using Akuma and M Bison. He got second into Panga League earlier in the year using mostly Akuma, then M Bison drops, and then he closed out with M Bison getting second there. So he had really good results being a tier enthusiast with the new DLC characters. And then it was like right before this tournament, he made it clear like I'm number 1 MR in the world with my JP again, so I'm ready to rock.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes you're just comfortable with a character, tier enthusiast or not. You're just gonna be more comfortable playing JP. I can't imagine the amount of hours that Kakeru sunk in playing JP when the game first came out. So even with a few nerfs, even though the main nerf was the Ninja nerf, but even then, comfortability will always triumph. Akuma being broken. I feel like.
Well, the main nerf now is the Amnesia nerf, but remember when he initially dropped it, he had the Crouching Heavy Punch was nerfed as well, right? I would argue that made a difference in terms of being able to commit to a character. If you're a zoning character and your anti-air loses sometimes, that's like that's a core issue that you might not be able to overlook unless you're like a real dedicated player, right? So to me, I think that nerf was enough, more so than the Ed nerfs, right? Like when I look at JP and it's kind of funny. I played both these characters, and I kind of stopped playing both these characters at the nerfs. I do want to clarify. I didn't drop them because I thought they were bad now. It's just like I never really, I kind of like them, but I'm not super attached to any character, and I wanted to play with shiny new toys. And when you have a patch where there's no shiny new toy, it's like, let me do something new. Let me just try and learn something new. That's where my mentality was. But with JP, the Crouching Heavy Punch nerf was for sure like, ooh, that's kind of ugly. Ed, on the other hand, I think they nerfed like really abusable offensive things, right? The flicker into DI or command dash back, the buffers into OD blitz, the dream combo was a little bit too rewarding. So I think the nerfs to Ed are like really nerfs to the average Ed player and not the top level. Because even Fudo still got like 5th place or something with Ed in this tournament as well. Like none of the good Ed players are having a problem. This is what I've noticed.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that Ed got changed with is still, like I said, still really good. I think if you're a long time fighting game player, you'll probably be comfortable with Ed. I'm glad to see Kakeru back on JP though, because I feel like the character diversity, or like when you think of JP, you think of Kakeru. Like
Yes.
he was the JP player of season 1. He was the one giving well, there were a lot of JP players in season 1,
But he
but
was the guy.
he was yeah, he was the guy. He was the guy basically. So I think having this guy is the guy, I think helps a lot, and it makes people want to be more in tune to like more invested in watching. Oh, I'm trying to learn JP. I want to learn JP stuff. This guy is the JP, so I gotta go watch him.
Yeah, I feel like because the cast is still so small, character diversity is such an issue, especially in a game that's a little bit more, centralized with the system mechanics. A lot of complaints about the game where it's like things get stale because it feels like players are doing the same thing, and there's a lot of like, I think as games get more system mechanic based, whoever like leverages the system mechanics the best becomes the default picks, right? It's like it kind of funnels people up to the top really quick. And JP, as hated as he was in season 1, and how there was a bit too much JP action, JP is different. He's an interesting character.
Yeah,
To this
yeah.
day, I love JP. I love watching him. I even love fighting him. I was saying this the other day on my stream. It's like, obviously a part of this, keep in mind I play JP heavy in season 1, so I really know the character, the matchup. I feel like it's a character that rewards you on both ends of the spectrum. If you're playing him or fighting him, if you know his mechanics really well, you can stop level 1 JP shenanigans easily, right? Like, oh, here's the portal. Here's how I anti if they go through. Here's how I deal with it if it spikes. Here's where I drive rush through his zoning patterns, right? Like, there's a lot of things where I feel like you're very rewarded for knowing the matchup, and you can outplay the JP player, especially now that the risk reward is fixed on Amnesia, because that was that was too much in season 1. But now that Kakeru is back on JP, it's like we finally have a strong JP in Capcom Cup. There's variety, and he's a character specialist, and people. Well, I mean, I love that. There's a part of me that respects the tier enthusiast who like adapts no matter what to win. I'm looking like a Mena or something, right? And I think there's an interesting parallel between these two players. Mena always tries to adapt now to whatever the meta requires of him to win. And Kakeru kind of did that, but he went back to JP to finally qualify. And, being that character specialist, it gives people a reason to root for him now, which is bizarre to say considering how hated JP was. But at the same time, they were actually both the two players that had the hardest time qualifying for Capcom Cup despite how good they were. And Punk as well. Punk is the third one, right? And then Punk and Kakeru ended up not qualifying last year. Kakeru got like 4th or 5th at Evo Vegas. He won Gamers 8. He was getting top 8s at the premieres. He won Blink Respawn. And then after Capcom Cup, he got 2nd at Evo Japan. Like and even in the beginning of season 2, he was getting 2nd at Topanga League, but wasn't in Capcom Cup. And now he's finally in it. I feel like it's long overdue to have him in Capcom Cup.
Yeah, I actually didn't even realize that will be Kakeru's first Capcom Cup for SF6, and even when you said Punk, is like this is Punk's first Capcom Cup for SF6, so it's so surprising. Like you just think like, oh, those are like household names, so obviously they're in Capcom Cup. But yeah, even remembering last year's Capcom Cup, a lot of the favorites weren't in Capcom Cup. Actually, me, Kakeru, and Punk all have the same Capcom Cups. That's kind of weird, right? That's something to think about.
And you're another character specialist, getting it done against all odds. You and Kakeru, low tier warriors at it right now.
Manon's not.
Where do you place JP then compared to Manon? What do you think?
I still don't. I think JP's all right, but I still don't think. I think Kakeru just played amazing, and like I said, I think it's comfortability. So I think comfortability triumphs tier and. Well, you say tier enthusiast. I was an old player. It's tier whore. But I think comfortability triumphs like all the tier nonsense. Anyway.
If I know you personally, and if I can call you a tier whore, I will. For everyone else, I like to use the euphemism for out of respect and politeness to get the point across as tier enthusiast. Yeah, I think JP's kind of just kind of mid tier, high mid. What do you think? He's not really the powerhouse he used to be, but I think he's really solid. I think maybe a low high tier character is JP. I think they struck a good balance with him.
Like a middle of the pack kind of character, probably like a little less than mid. He's still like high mid because like the power level in this game is just like absurdly high. But even then, he's still like, what is it, 24? I would probably say like 13, 14 best in the game right now, in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see that, but I think he's a character that has depth and rewards being a specialist.
Yeah,
And Kakeru is a character that, or the player who he developed this guy, right? Like if you were playing JP, you were just trying to copy paste whatever Kakeru did. So it's awesome to see him finally make it in against all odds.
It's also nice to see Bananakin started entering online tournaments again. He's been playing pretty well in the online weeklies in NA now. So, shout out to Bananakin as well.
Yeah, my two goats are back, right? I'm feeling inspired a little bit. I did a stream the other day just playing JP just for one session just to like remember what it was like. Didn't remember any of my combos and didn't know any of the new season 2 stuff. But it was fun to pick him back up again. So who knows? We might see a resurgence to the ire of many, because I think people still hate this character. There's a lot of people who are still hungover from season 1 JP, even though he's not the same character anymore. But I'm really happy to see a little bit of resurgence in JP. It's good variety actually, and big plays from Momochi as well. As soon as the character was nerfed, got the big dub. Played amazing that tournament, but it was impossible for him to qualify once Kakeru got top 3. Essentially, he had to have Higuchi and Kakeru get only 4th at best, and he have him win to qualify. So he's going to go to the regional finals instead, I believe, as the first seed. So if we actually look at the regional finals for Japan, it's Higuchi versus Orarin, which I think I'm butchering his name. He's like the surprise guy in the winner side. Momochi versus Fuda, the Edmure right away. Hikaru versus Kawano, and then Goichi versus Moke. Those are the losers side. So really interesting cast of characters. Just to touch on Orarin real quick, and this gives perspective to how stacked Japan is. Orarin's kind of like a newer player on the block in terms of competing in Street Fighter 6, and I believe he plays Ken. I haven't seen too much of his actual gameplay, but he ended up getting 2nd in the first World Warrior, and then the rest of his placements are he got a 32, top 32, 9th place, top 48. And that gave him winner's side in the regional finals.
Wow, that's insane. If that was any other region, I feel like you'd be losers or maybe not even in the regional final. That's actually insane. The amount of good players are like, I guess, variance in the top 8s allowed him to get top 8 winners.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, like Kawano barely got in. He tied with John Takeuchi in points with 50 points. So like between the loser side, Hikaru has 65 points and Kawano has 50. And then 70 points was Orarin for getting in the winner side. So the spread is so tight until you hit like Momochi and beyond Higuchi. It's like 120 to 130, right? Between Kakeru, Higuchi, and Momochi. So the point spread is so condensed in Japan. And this is talking about Daigo has 10 points total. You know what I mean? Like just to get perspective, Sako has 25. Gachikun has 35, and Gachikun qualified via the CPT Singapore premiere, I believe, last year. It was Singapore, yes. So like it just goes to show how stacked this region is. That I think Orarin had that one great 2nd place off the bat, then just like try to stay alive for 4 more tournaments, and then got in winner's side, which is definitely crazy to see. But what do you think about the regional finals? Who do you think will get the last spot here between those players? Because Momochi has so much momentum right now, but it's hard to call.
I remember I would always say first seed never wins in the regional finals because it was pretty common. I felt like took a while before a lot of the first seed players were actually winning their respective regional final. So that one's kind of a tight spot. But I also believe I don't think anyone from losers has won any of the regional finals either. So I actually think the favorite would probably be Higuchi. Probably, I think he has one of the better shots. Oh wait, no, Momochi, not Higuchi. I'm sorry.
Well, it's funny how it depends on how you look at it, right? Higuchi has less points, but he's the number 1 seed. Actually, I misspoke earlier. Sorry, Higuchi's number 1 seed because his top 3 finishes are better than the best top 3 from Momochi. Overall, though, Momochi has like 5 more points. So it goes to show how you're splitting hairs here. So Higuchi has number 1 seed, Momochi number 2. Higuchi has Orarin as the first match, and Momochi has Fudo as the first match. So yeah, it'll be hard to call. And that's an interesting stat. I'm not sure if anyone's from losers, but people have gotten close. I know there's a couple of 2nd place finishes that I've seen where they started from losers, including I think last year in Japan, where Fudo won the regional finals. I believe last year, who was it? It was Yamaguchi, who started from losers and got second to Fudo in the DJ mirror. And he went all the way through losers just to lose in the end of Fudo. So there's been a lot of those cases, but I feel like you just burn out by the time you get to grand finals.
You play too many games. But I remember Incross used to keep a stat for that. I think it was like for a lot of the offline CPT events, like no one had ever won from like losers during like the Street Fighter 5 time. I think you said the last time that happened, I think it was Tokido at Evo 2017, actually. So it usually never happens. So I was like, oh, well, I guess starting from losers just sucks, I guess. So
yeah, it's difficult to overcome that disadvantage, but we'll see how that goes. The World Warrior Regional Finals for Japan will be taking place next week, pretty much January 19th. So I'll be on the lookout for that tournament. It should be super exciting. And we're finally like closing out the final qualifiers for Capcom Cup, so we can do some kind of prediction show or something when we actually have all the qualifiers decided. After me and Rob pick a pool of death.
I forgot you got randomly abducted to do the drawing for the CPT, which is kind of crazy.
I shit you not. I was literally sitting down to like get ready to stream, and I opened up Twitter, and I was jump scared by seeing my own face on Twitter and an announcement with Rob that we're doing a drawing show, and I'm like, what happened here? Yeah, but it should be fun. I told Rob, like, if any pool of death happens where we end up pulling like Punk, Big Bird, and I don't know, Momochi into the same group or something like that, or Kakeru into the same group, I'm just not going to speak anything. I'm silent for the rest of the stream. I'll bite my tongue because I can't speak all the negative things I have to say about the format on Capcom Fighters itself. But it should be fun. Speaking of fun, beating dead horses. So I've already talked about this at length on the Clips channel, but the community was in uproar again regarding the lack of costumes and DLC content for Street Fighter 6 in reaction to the continuous kind of garbage slop battle pass DLCs that are put out for your avatar in the battle hub. And there's always like little stickers or like a new ranked match intro card and things of that nature, where people are starving for just like more frequent DLC characters to actually buff the roster and supply more characters to play with, and just costumes itself. And so that's been a big discussion on the Twitter NA FGC sphere. I've got some feedback that says, people in Japan love this stuff. NA is not the entire world. You Americans are so self-centered. Maybe, but it's very peculiar because in the vocal minority audience, they're clamoring for things to spend money on, and Capcom seems to not want to deliver that while continuing to supply like this lower effort, lower quality DLC cosmetics for the Battle Hub avatars. And these are things like getting an additional helmets, getting a different costume to put on your custom avatar that you put in the Battle Hub. And it's hard to know exactly how popular or successful this is because there's no communication regarding this. We've had one DLC costume pack since the game is released, and it's been 19 months. And most characters, I believe, all only released with 2 costumes, the default and an alternative. And even then, there's not many colors for them, so it leads to a lot of repetitive, like stale matches where no one really has too much of a unique identity based on their costume and color choice. So it's been a confusing situation due to the lack of communication. So I'm not sure if you felt that same pain or noticed that discussion in the community yourself, Idom.
I see a lot of the costume topics and like DLC stuff, but like my opinion is Capcom must be making bank off the avatar stuff. So it has to be. It's the only thing that makes sense in my opinion. Or I guess it's easier to sell like stuff for your avatar to dress them up, because if you get like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle or like a burrito, a Chipotle burrito that you could throw on your avatar, you could throw that on your character and it doesn't matter. If I get a burrito and say the burrito costume's only for Ryu, I don't play Ryu. How am I going to want to dress Ryu up as a burrito? So I guess you get more reach if you have it on the avatar, more so than just having like, oh, here's a Ryu costume. Wait a minute, I don't play Ryu. I don't want this. And then you're just losing money. I don't know. Like this is all speculation because I don't know what Capcom's doing. I would be buying costumes in a heartbeat. I've been running the same one Manon costume for like since game release. Actually, I don't get to Switch. I haven't even used Costume 3 like that because I don't know, it's just not my cup of tea. But I've been running the same costume for how was this game?
19 months.
18, 19 months.
19 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the crux of the issue is that there's a need that's not being met from, like I want to keep clarifying because I get pushback from this. I read all the YouTube comments from the more casual audience when these topics reach them. I understand that the FGC on Twitter is like the top 1% of the 1% of like the super users of the game. I get it. I understand. The problem is we have no clue what's happening because we don't get any communication from Capcom about what the silent majority is and their purchasing power and like what direction they want to support the game in, because it feels like we're just abandoned a little bit. And yeah, I mean, you have a point that maybe this makes money by it. Maybe it's just an easy way for them to make money, low cost to produce, high rate of return. Maybe the investment is worth it for them to just keep producing that. Maybe making costumes for the main cast. Another take I see all the time is, they did their own custom RE engine. It's so difficult to produce these high quality 3D mesh live texture analysis. There's this whole technical spiel that they give you about why the costumes are so hard to make. And it's like, maybe we don't know. We don't know. Maybe it costs them millions of dollars and it's not worth it for them to make these costumes. The only thing I know is at the end of the day, there's a need that's not being met in the community. And I like your point about like you talking about you want to switch costumes, because I think another thing that gets missed is that players find identity in their costumes. Like this isn't just a case of like the modern gamer brain rot that needs constant stimulation and updates in order to maintain interest in games as a service, which, by the way, is the reality of the situation. That's a different discussion point, but like we got to get with the times. That is how games are now, and we need to compete. Okay, like you're old if you're making that point at this point. Like the young audience expects updates in their live games, but beyond that, you identify with the character first, then the costume, then the color. Like that impacts your unique identity as a player. And we've had costumes over the years that have become famous. I mean, Banana Ken. He doesn't even play Ken anymore, but his name used to be literally Banana Ken because he played Ken in Street Fighter 4 and used like the yellow color, right? He was the Banana Ken. And like I have a picture behind my head of me and my Balrog, custom made for me when I got top 8 at Combo Breaker 2017, and that's my Balrog costume, right? I picked that costume on purpose because no one else picked it, Like there's identities that we form with these costumes as well. So I think that gets missed in the discussion. And we have just less expression in the game overall because of that.
Yeah, I remember I used to always run the Laura swimsuit color 10 costume. And then like that was always the one. And I remember I went to a TO at one event. I was like, yo, can you get this costume for me? Because my costume's not here. But even then, like it's something you can like associate yourself with. And then even after I won Capcom Cup and the CPT costume was there, like that was my costume. If you saw somebody on that costume, it was probably me. So I don't know. I feel like they're missing a lot of the audience, but even at the same time, I want to understand them because like I don't think making a costume would be easy. Like it can't be. And I also would want to throw in that people like customization stuff. I don't know how you are with like other games. Like when I play a customizable game, like I don't really care what my character looks like unless I'm going really in depth. Like I know you can like make your character how you look in Monster Hunter or Dark Souls or whatever. Like you have the eye scars or whatever. So maybe people just really like that as the avatar stuff. So you can just dress up your avatar with how you want to look like. I've never really been like a super customizable guy, but when I do play a game and I want to customize my character, it is really fun to do, honestly.
Right. No, people love that stuff. So I'm really happy they have that in the Battle Hub mode, because I don't love in-depth character customizations when it comes to the main game mode, because you need a level of visual consistency for fighting games. Like when Tekken allows all that customization to actually carry over into real ranked gameplay, I'm like, okay, that's like a little bit much, like it's distracting to a point. And it's funny here, it's a nice novelty, but in my opinion, I wouldn't want like the Battle Hub customization to come to the main cast in Street Fighter 6. So I'm happy they have that, and it's great to support that. It's just the weird contrast. It shouldn't even be an either or situation. It's becoming that because one side is getting fed while the other is not, right? It should be, these are two modes to play the game and we can all enjoy all of them. But they're just not really supplying it to the other side. So it's really kind of, I don't know, it's disappointing to see, but we'll see if they finally get with the times. And I'm glad you brought up the point about you having your own costume in the game, because if anyone should be complaining, it should be you literally have your own costume in Street Fighter 5.
I don't know, when you put up Street Fighter 6, like, you know how it's what you have World Tour, Battle Hub, and Fighting Ground.
Mm-hmm.
I swear, I think like 90% of the community or 90% of the player base that's playing Street Fighter 6 probably goes directly into Battle Hub.
Right.
Like, that's where I think they're all funneling into. So I think it'll make sense for like a Capcom's perspective. Obviously, we don't have the number, but I think you're going to load in, you're going to go into Battle Hub, you're going to see your character, jump out and be like, hey, I'm here. And then that's what they want to keep pushing and keep that kind of, fun and happy vibe versus like, I don't know, the 9% going to Fighting Ground on the right, because that's where all the sweaty tryhards are, and then
Right.
the 1% playing like World Tour or something. So I guess it makes sense in that regard.
Yeah, it definitely does. But like that's the problem, is that we have to speculate. Like, we don't know, and that's where I think these negative feelings crop up. The other pushback I received when talking about this is like, oh yeah, once again, like the NA only perspective. I saw a bunch of like translated tweets from other Japanese fans also, because usually what happens is Capcom announces these battle passes on Twitter, and then everyone just starts exploding like, where the hell are the costumes? Why are you serving us slop over and over? What is going on here? And then people are like, oh, Japan and Battle Hub, they love this. And then there's still like a bunch of tweets and people like, why aren't you giving us costumes in Japanese? Like, when you start translating them, they're like, this sucks. Where are the costumes? So I think people all over the world are feeling this pain a little bit. It's just really hard to tell. But I definitely agree. Like, there could be a total valid reason for Capcom as a business to be like, hey, man, the costumes cost more and we get less return. But when we put out Battle Hub, that's 99% of our audience, Battle Hub cosmetics, and they keep buying it, and it makes us way more money for way less investment. So that could very well be the case. That could be where the direction this franchise heads entirely, right? And I get called elitist, and I am elitist. I still think that Fighting Ground is the main game. That's
that part I disagree with you. I actually think Fighting Grounds for the try hard esports. Oh man, you guys are trying to enter tournaments. Right. I'm just trying to go on and mash buttons. So I think that's where like most of the audience is funneling into the Battle Hub, and there's nothing wrong with that. Before you guys,
but let me push back on this and ask you this: without the main versus mode, if it was just Battle Hub and Avatar battles, would this game be successful? That's what I'll say to that. Maybe. Do you think if it was this?
I think so because they still have the arcade cabinets. I could just go in Battle Hub and sit down and play with the characters.
No. I mean, like, without that. I'm saying literally pull out Street Fighter 6 Ryu versus Ken. Get rid of that mode, and it's literally just the avatar customization Battle Hub to do avatar battles. Would this game be successful?
No.
Then the main game mode is fighting. I'm sorry. The main game mode is Ryu versus Ken. Fight. That is the main game mode. I'm sorry. That is the mode you should support too.
I think hold on. I think if you don't call it Street Fighter, you can't call the game Street Fighter, but you take out Ryu and Ken and take out all the character and just say it's a new IP. It's called, I don't know, Let's Fight. Like call it a fighting game, Let's Fight. And it's just the avatar battles and you could customize your character. I think that could be a legit game. That could work. It bomb? Oh,
bomb.
Well,
no, dude, it's the Street Fighter IP that carries, man. It is the Street. Like, I agree that the Battle Hub mode is great. I don't want anyone to come away from this thinking that I'm a hater on these modes and that people should feel bad or whatever for playing these games. No, I'm super happy they exist, and I think it serves as a potential funnel to get people, because fighting games are so hard to get into, right? And I was begging for these kind of modes in Street Fighter 5 and going to Street Fighter 6. My main talking points when going to Street Fighter 6 was we need the complete single player experience, we need an arcade mode, and we need some kind of more social features, and they delivered on all of that. So Street Fighter 6 has done amazing. It's just post launch it's starting to slow its momentum, and they're not building up the cast as fast as people would like, and the lack of costumes, so it's got a little weird. But I disagree. I'm sorry. Just on a fundamental level, Battle Hub is super important, vital in today's gaming environment, and it's done a lot for the community, I think, overall. But it does not exist without Street Fighter. That's all I'm saying. I gotta put my foot down there. I'm sorry. Anyone listening, call me an elitist scumbag. You're right. I'm sorry. That's all. I had to take a hard stance there. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe one day we'll see that. Yeah, the next announcement is not Street Fighter 6 DLC. It's Let's Fight on the next gen consoles.
some random new IP that it's probably hard to make a new IP fighting game because everyone knows Street Fighter, Tekken, and Mortal Kombat. But even then, like that's what I think they want to do. But you got to throw Ryu in there so people buy it and be like, oh, that's Street Fighter. I know that guy. So that's what I
Yeah,
think.
maybe if they just at least put like a few default avatars where it's like they're based on the Street Fighter cast and you can pre-select them and then build them from there. So you have like Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Zangief, whatever, and then they have those movesets in the Battle Hub mode. Maybe it would absolutely have to be free to play. If they did it free to play finally, which I think is like the big crossroads that they've been trying to put off by adding all these extra value adds like with the World Tour and everything, then maybe. You know what? Maybe it'll come out in the next console generation because the next thing coming up is potentially Street Fighter 6 on Switch 2. Do you believe?
I believe in the Switch too. I do not think Street Fighter 6 is going to go on the Switch
Maybe
2.
you've nailed it right here. Listen, we got to call. If this happens, I would. Honestly, Idom, this might be an amazing moment. You might have just predicted Let's Fight by Capcom on the Switch 2 where they don't put the Street Fighter 6 main game mode. It's only avatar customization and avatar battles and Battle Hub. You called it here first on Extra Trashy. I'm telling you.
Don't make that game. But I don't know. The Street Fighter 6 on the Switch 2 is just, I don't know. I don't know how you feel. I know we both have Switches. We're not playing fighting games on our Switches. Let's be honest. I saw Guilty Gear come out on the Switch, and I was just like, why?
That's because you're an elitist scumbag, Idom, and you don't understand the casual gaming experience of, sitting down on the airplane, playing arcade mode fighting games on your Switch.
Why? There's so many other options. Why?
Why do people play in Battle Hub? I don't know, bro. Listen, this once again, we are not. You even said it here yourself. We're not the main audience.
I have reasonings for why people play in Battle Hub. It's fun. It's chill. There's no stress. I'm not worried about my imaginary rank point. I can't. I need to find somebody who owns a fighting game on the Switch to comment or just let me know why are you playing fighting games on your Switch. If that's your only console, you know what? That's fair. But I don't know.
Well, there is. I mean, you got to remember, like, video games are digital toys for children, right? So there's going to be a lot of kids who don't have other consoles, and so that's going to widen the market appeal as well. By the way, just to clarify for everybody, Switch 2 was leaked. It's pretty much guaranteed to happen. People have been hinting that maybe Street Fighter 6 has had a lack of DLC main game updates because they're trying to go for maybe a Super Street Fighter 6 with the Switch 2 announcement, like, bundle the DLC updates plus a Switch 2 release. I've heard some real tinfoil hat conspiracy theories, major cope to justify why there's been no DLC announcement. So that's the backdrop for this discussion here.
If I have my Switch, if I'm little Timmy and I have my Switch and like my mom wants to buy me a game, I'm not gonna. Maybe I'll ask them for Street Fighter, but I'm gonna ask for Mario, Zelda. Metroid, something along those lines. I'm not gonna be like, Mommy, can I get Street Fighter because I see Luke on the cover or something? That's so strange. Like, I don't know. That's just me, I guess.
No, they've seen the monstrosity Cronenberg type body horror avatar customizations that people have been putting out in the Battle Hub, and they're like, Mommy, I want to make this. And then she's like, what is this fucking horror game you put in front of me? Get away from this. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think it's gonna have that much of a market appeal, but it'll be more than none if that comes to be. I mean, people do buy these games on these platforms. And they do play them, and there's also like the very small for like the hardcore players. Occasionally, like maybe a pad player might practice on an airplane or something like that, right? They'll buy a second copy of whatever game, because I think even DBFZ came out on Switch. Is that a fever dream? That happened, right?
Is that a thing? I don't even know. Is DBFZ on the Switch? It sounds believable, but I am not sure.
Yeah, it's on the Switch. You didn't play that? That sounds right up your alley, dude.
Why would I play DBFZ on the Switch? I have it on everything else.
Well, this is your homework item. I mean, you're like a DBFZ fan. You play the game. You play on pad. This is perfect. You got to get DBFZ on the Switch and then come back and see the results here. Because I bet you might be like, I understand now.
I will say this one thing on the portable side of things. I did have Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 on my Vita, and I played it a lot. But it allowed me to practice while I was going to school. So
Exactly.
it helped me. No, but that's different because Marvel is the best fighting game ever made. So it's different in that sense. And it's on my Vita. I wouldn't do that for a Switch.
So is
I
the
don't know.
problem the platform or the problem the game?
No, okay. It's not the game's problem. It's the platform because like the Vita it kind of made sense, but I don't know for the Switch. Like I said, there's so many better games on the Switch. On my Vita, I don't even remember what games I had on my Vita besides Marvel. I had like an Uncharted game or something. So I feel like
Okay.
there's so many options on the Switch that are just triumph the fighting game side of thing versus for the Vita, all I had was Marvel.
Right.
Essentially.
No, I agree. I mean, the Switch is actually like a really good, a really, really good console. In fact, I think it's the best console of this generation. So I'm kind of happy they're actually doubling down with the Switch. I mean, there's no way that I don't even know what the Xbox model is called anymore. And
no,
I have a PS5 here collecting dust, right? Like you have a PS5 too, right? Do you use it? Is there anything on there?
No. The last game I played on my PS5 was Final Fantasy Remake. I don't remember.
Okay, you dug it up there. Exactly.
Nah, the Switch left a sour taste in my mouth after I played Scarlet and Violet because they couldn't even run it properly.
That's true. I mean, but that's Pokemon's fault. I would put that on the Pokemon company, right?
Game Freak.
Yeah, that's their fault. The Switch is not the most powerful console, but I mean, Mario Odyssey and Zelda run on it just fine, and they look way infinitely better than all the new Pokemon games. I abandoned Pokemon forever ago. Those games look like trash now. I'm very disappointed in the Pokemon series.
All the new ones have been so mid. Like I love Pokemon, but like I keep buying them because I can't get away from Pokemon. But all the new ones have been. I played Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. Have just been not for me.
Yeah, you got to stop buying them. They're trash. That is the one franchise. I mean, listen, we're old and talk about Pokemon, so like who's more sad here? But it's a little sad the direction Pokemon has gone, in my opinion. But it's still better than PS5. I mean, and the thing about the PS5 is if you are in the market to buy a PS5, like you have the funds to buy a PS5, you probably have a decent functional gaming PC. And why would you buy PS5 over that? Unless I guess you like the Sony movie simulators. I guess I should respect those fans there. Like God of War. Like, did you actually like God of War, Ragnarok, and all that stuff?
I like God of War. I still buy a lot of. What's the last one I played? I played Ragnarok. I think that was the last one I played, but I'm trying to think. Actually, wait, Brian, you actually might have got me. Look, I have not played my PS5 that much. Like, it's actually a dust collector. I think I've played like 4 or 5 games total on that console.
That's what I'm saying.
And that console, and I got it day one because I had a friend who works at Best Buy that snuck me a PS5. But I actually think I've played like 4 or 5 games total on that thing.
It's just
maybe my PS5 does something.
It's just the worst console generation ever. Like that's why I'm saying Switch clears, because at least there's dedicated developers on the Switch, right? Like Nintendo has their own exclusive titles, and they're worthwhile, and they're still small scale enough to be able to take some kind of risk and have some kind of innovation. Even though I think a lot of things have gotten stale, just like Pokemon has gotten super stale, and they refuse to make the games good. And the early Switch titles like Mario Party and stuff like that real stale like corporate ties branding that they used like from the Switch for the Mario games, that was kind of bad for a while. But then like Super Mario Wonder came out, Odyssey was great. Like they're actually still able to properly scale the games, their scope, so that they can afford to make interesting games and not make them these massive blockbusters with bloated budgets and scope that require this to be the most middle of the lane, mass appealing products to ensure that they make back their $500 million investment, right? It's like the Sony games have gotten too big for their own britches here. It's like, I don't care about these movies on the PS5. Like, that's why Balatro being nominated for the Game of the Year, I think, was such a refreshing thing to happen. Because it's just a game that doesn't try to, take you for a ride. It's just, this is the game, these are the mechanics, have fun. And it does it amazing.
Yeah. It's simple and easy. It's funny. You actually bring that up. I don't want to go like a whole freaking Nintendo discussion, but I think one of the reasons a lot of the Pokemon games have been like getting kind of worse is obviously because Nintendo just trying to like market it for so many people. But I think the games are getting easier, and I think the games being easier is actually making it less interesting for us older gamers, I guess, if that makes any
Mm.
sense. So like we're playing kids games essentially, but now they're so unintuitive, I guess. And then it's like, oh, why are we gonna play this? This just feels terrible. Or this just feels bad.
Mm.
Kind of logic.
I mean, I never got past the visuals to even get into the game.
Oh,
I
really?
just looked at them and I'm like, this looks like shit. I just used my eyes, you know. I was like, oh, let me test this with my eyeballs real quick. It didn't pass the eyeball test. I was like, oh, these graphics are terrible, and it looks like they didn't try. And then I moved on from there. So that's the test you have to pass. Is the did you try test? Which reminds me of the game that is trying really hard right now, Marvel Rivals. A big part of this discussion point also, like when bringing it back to like Street Fighter 6 DLC, is Marvel Rivals. You know, it's already like taking over a huge portion of the community. I think Sajam is just like locked in a dark room right now, you know, with the screen glowing in front of him. Cue that one clip of him just like cracking out in that game. He's been posting only screenshots of his next rank up in Marvel Rivals. And on top of that, they keep pumping out DLC. They pumped out a bunch of different costume packs for all the cast, and then they just put out 2 new DLC characters. Half of the Fantastic Four just got released, and like the other half are coming in a few weeks. So it brings into question like the modern games as a service model and the expectations from the player base, and how fighting games are still like 10 years behind those modern expectations from like a lot of audiences, and how other games are crushing it right now and essentially eating their lunch. I feel like I haven't seen a game in a while that had this many people from the FGC enamored as Marvel Rivals.
I think the last game like that was Overwatch, but I think I think the problem is we're just all the people who play fighting games are so old, so we're just so far behind. I feel like we
Yeah.
just haven't the people haven't realized, wow, this is what's working and this is what's doing really good. I think Marvel Rivals actually just hit. It's funny we're doing this right now. The new season just launched today, and they hit like 500K concurrent player, which is more than when the game first came out. So the game is just growing up and up and up because I feel like people are like, hey, telling their friends, hey, this game is sick, you should try it out. Hey, there's costumes. Hey, Invisible Woman's here now, and they have all this cool stuff. So I've been playing it too, and I don't know, it's just a fun game. I can't really say not much about it, but to go back on fighting games, we're in the past. It's the same people who used to play on the arcade cabinet from like the 90s just saying, hey, this shouldn't be like this because back in my day, I had to put a quarter in to play. When like we're behind.
Well, there was like a middle ground there in the generations, right? Like the most predatory gaming model was the arcade cabinet, right? That was literally designed to just take your quarters, having games be too challenging and too unintuitive to pick up. Or usually they're intuitive. I guess I'll give them credit for that. But like they're meant to be an unfair challenge to a degree, so that you keep putting the quarter in, right? And they're trying to nail that balance between ease of access and then like difficulty to keep you hooked on the game. And then like there was a sweet spot where things started coming to console, and it's like, okay, these can only really ship one time. Even arcade cabs had updates. Like all of the most famous versions of Street Fighter are literal hardware updates, right? Street Fighter 2 Super Turbo, that was a brand new piece of hardware they had to ship to these the arcades to replace the old arcade cabs, and it was basically DLC updates, right? Like that's essentially what it was. And there was like a kind of a sweet spot for a while with console games before the online era, where you could actually put DLC out to patch a game, where games had to release, be complete, you pay one time for the price, and it's all the content on the disc forever, and that's it. So a lot of older gamers are like, oh, it's like a pro-consumer stance where it's like, you should always be given the full value of the product up front with one price, and you should never, any DLC that comes after is because they took the tomato off the burger and they're selling it back to you later, right? Like that's always the mentality. Like no matter what happens, if a DLC item comes out, it's because they actually took a quarter inch off your hot dog and then they're giving it back to you for like 50% of the price of the original hot dog, right? Like it's some kind of scam is the viewpoint. And that does exist. I'm not going to deny that. That definitely is something that has existed. But I don't think that's always the case. And I think modern gamer expectations, people playing games today have been born after the invention of DLC. And they're not only have been born after that, they have credit cards and they're paying for this with their own money. You know, it's like this is their entire life experience. And then I think we could grow to accept that there's good games as a service which provide good value for the consumer, and then there's predatory ones which suck ass. I think it's okay to admit that there's both, but I see in a lot of the FGC, like especially on YouTube when I talk about this stuff, there's a lot of people who are like, anything that is DLC is inherently evil and a scam and you should never buy it. And I'm like, I don't know about that, because I kind of want my Street Fighter game 3 years into it to have new characters. I like that. I will pay money for that.
Yeah.
I enjoy this game still lasting, and I feel like I got thousands of hours of value out of this. I don't mind spending 10 more bucks for a couple characters or something, you know? Like, that's just my perspective. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's funny you said about the, you know, kids are being born during the era of, you know, microtransactions and, you know, stuff being in the game or being added later. You know, I never really thought about that because, you know, back in the day, you used to buy a game and that was the game. I would get like GoldenEye. That was it. I didn't get DLC missions or, you know, a new gun to play with. But even to say like the getting the DLC or just getting new stuff in general is always super fun to really advance the game or make it feel a lot better than it felt now. So the updates for nowadays happen so frequently. Like Marvel Rivals get an update, like a hero balance patch, or you know, you get a costume or a cosmetic, and it's like every 2 or 3 weeks. Fortnite's the same way. I think they're adding Dante to Fortnite today or something. But it's always something new. Games I played, Destiny updates, they have like a huge update every month and a half, which is why I think fighting games are so behind. Like obviously I know Mortal Kombat does it and they'll do like an update every month or something to try to shake up the cast and make the game feel more exciting and refreshing. But for Street Fighter, I guess our last update was a month ago, but even then it still doesn't happen as frequently, or you know, we get costumes or something. So like I said, that's where I think a lot of the fighting games are just in the past, because I guess aside from, you know, Street Fighter just updated, I don't remember where the last Guilty Gear update was. I think we've been playing the same game for quite some time now. KOF, I think they actually just got an update.
I think Guilty Gear just got an update too, because I know Potemkin is now like terrorizing everybody. So I think the problem with Guilty Gear is every time they get an update,
we get it once a year kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's like a once a year kind of thing. So I think that's really the main issue, and like they happen so infrequently.
Right. They do, and you're bringing up other fighting games though, but like Street Fighter to me is in a different league still, even though Guilty Gear is the one that's made the most gains in modern era, right? And I think due to a large part in like the failure of Street Fighter 5, right? Guilty Gear, and it really has stepped up, but there's still a much smaller developer overall, ArcSys than Capcom, and so I think comparing Capcom to NRS is a much more applicable comparison. So like with Terry, the last DLC character, that was working on 5 months ago. He was in September. That's when he was released, right? So that's kind of, you know, I'm not saying that I'm not still interested in the game, because I'm even playing Terry, right? I'm enjoying playing Terry, and he had some new buffs. So like there was a balance patch update. Like I feel entertained and engaged with the game, but I'm just saying for modern gamer expectations, yeah, maybe their attention spans have been rotted by, you know, short form content and TikTok, and they need constant dopamine and stimulation from artificial DLC updates to keep them engaged. Maybe, but there's some truth in there. There's some like reality of the situation of the demands of the audience, and just saying it shouldn't be this way doesn't change things. It doesn't make things better. Like if you care about fighting games being engaging or not, it's like, what skin off your back is it if they release a new DLC costume or a new character more frequently? Like, is that going to impact your experience negatively if you just don't buy the costume? Like, I always see this weird pushback, and I'm confused by it, because I'm like, how does it hurt you at all?
It's funny you say it. I've seen people be like, I don't want characters to come out more frequently because it's another matchup to learn. Like, if another character is going to be terrorizing me on rank kind of thing. Like, oh, say, I don't know, Sagat came out randomly tomorrow. Oh, now I got to get my ass kicked by Sagat. So it's kind of the same thing.
Interesting.
If you think about it, it's just a new character. It's another matchup to learn, another annoying character to fight. Because, you know, people hate every character but their own. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, but is that the complaints of the masses, or like the top, you know, super user competitive players? Because I used to be the same way. Back when I was like just full steam ahead with Balrog. Anytime a DLC character came out, because Street Fighter 5 had way more frequent DLC characters. I did the comparison. By this point, 19 months later in Street Fighter 5's life, compared to Street Fighter 6. This would be season 2 after Evo, after Manat had released. And so the cast would actually be like 27 characters, and we only have 24 in Street Fighter 6. So even though Street Fighter 5 came out with 2 less characters, by this point in the game's lifespan, it had 3 more characters than Street Fighter 6 does. So it's not in people's minds that there's less content for like the people playing, once again, the main game mode. I'm sorry, this is like I have a chip on my shoulder about this. The main game mode is the versus game mode. I'm sorry. There's like less stuff in there for people to dig into. And I think the lack of characters is definitely, people are starting to feel that a little bit. So yeah, it's not in people's heads. There really was less characters going on in Street Fighter 6 right now.
I think they have a path, because I think I did the math on this. I think after the first DLC waiver came out, I think if this game were to last, it was like 8 or 9 years, because Street Fighter 4 ended with 44 character, Street Fighter 5 ended with 45 character. I think 9 or 10 years down the line of Street Fighter 6, if they keep releasing 4 characters a year, they're gonna end on 46, which I guess would just make sense. So that's where I think. But I think if they do the slow, drip feeding of here's a character, here's a character, here's a character, here's a character, oh, here's 4 for your year, we're gonna end on 46, which I think is probably their plan for the long haul of the game.
Okay, so you think they're going to go for 7? Yeah, I just double checked the math, right? 7 years would get it to 46 at 4 year. You think they'll go that long with this game? You think that's their plan, and they wouldn't want to pivot to a Street Fighter 7 sooner?
I think Street Fighter 6 has probably been the most successful, well-regarded Street Fighter game since Street Fighter 2, probably. So I think so.
No, definitely. I think objectively it's been the most successful. Yeah. Well, Street Fighter 4 had a huge release. I'm actually, off the top of my head, I don't know the sales figures between Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 6. I wouldn't be surprised if Street Fighter 4 still sold way more. But it's definitely, the lows are Street Fighter 3 and Street Fighter 5. Especially release Street Fighter 5 was the lowest low, I think. And then, so they bounced back. But to sustain that, doing that in Street Fighter 5 at the rate they did, they pulled it off. Like, the game survived that long because of the consistent support that it had. But they've dialed back the support in Street Fighter 6. So how is it supposed to last? Like, the expectations are only growing for games as a service. They're not slowing down. They're not decreasing. And Street Fighter 6 is slowing down the rate of their support. It's backwards. So I don't understand how they're planning on maintaining interest at this rate, to be quite honest. I personally feel like it's a little slow. It's possible. I'm probably a little overdramatic. I'll admit it. I'm being a little overdramatic. But I just kind of wish there was a little bit more live update, a little bit more service in my games as a service. That's what I'm trying to get at. That's the emotional argument. Street Fighter 6 is doing fine.
Maybe all the fighting game developers are mad at all the other games for updating so frequently, because they probably can't choose to update so fast, because I guess this is a lot of work, because like I said, Capcom probably got people working on Monster Hunter, Resident Evil, Devil May Cry, so many like amazing franchises that probably require a lot more people to work on. Monster Hunter World's their best-selling game, I think, and Wilds is coming out soon, so they probably got everyone working on Wilds.
Yeah. That's definitely some of the theories that people are putting forward, is that they're pulling people off the Street Fighter 6 development team and the Street Fighter 6 resources. They're allocating them to other projects. But we're all speculating, but that would make sense. I could believe that, because, Street Fighter, like you mentioned before, is like, it's the worst performing of their major franchises. I think it's a significant franchise to Capcom, but it's not Resident Evil. It's not Monster Hunter. So maybe their plan is like what you said. Maybe it's supposed to be a slow burn for them, just something to make a little bit of revenue over many years with a slow trickle of content. Maybe that's their plan.
Well, I even to say, like, Capcom kind of, they're the fighting game. If you go on the street and you bring up a fighting game to some random guy on the street, they're only gonna know Street Fighter, Tekken, and Mortal Kombat. Not to beat a dead horse, but Mortal Kombat 1 not doing too hot. And then you got Street Fighter and Tekken, so they're kind of just running with it. There's only like 2 major fighting games that I feel like to a casual audience will be able to pick up and like understand and know what you're talking about. So they kind of running a monopoly, because they're the best 2D fighting game right now. That's why even Tekken is getting away with, having a monopoly. If I wanted to play a 3D fighting game, what do I? Well, Virtua Fighter's coming out, but what do I got to play?
Yeah, Tekken definitely has the monopoly for sure. Yeah, Virtua Fighter. That's an interesting one. I didn't even think to bring that up at first. How do you feel about that
Oh,
announcement? Because
uh,
your thoughts?
I, I love all fighting games, but I played Virtual Fighter once. I think I played Vanessa, but I just don't really care.
You don't
To be honest.
care. So the weird thing about that trailer is, so they did the teaser trailer, I believe, at the Game Awards, and then they had a little bit of a developer discussion on the project, and then they had some other trailer at the NVIDIA press release, but it had that big asterisk at the bottom, rendered ahead of time, not in-game footage. And so I'm like, what does this? Whenever you see that that little asterisk that says not in-game footage, it's like, then what is the point of this? Like, I think they're trying to show off the engine, and then maybe they rendered like the cutscene from the engine, but it's not real time. So I can't tell what to make of it. But the trailer, it showed a really minimalistic aesthetic, kind of like a more realism aesthetic, with real high fidelity graphics and a lot of detail in the environment and in the background. And it looked like there was a lot of interactions with like the debris and the trash around. And every hit had impact, and the blocking looked dynamic, right? Like they're moving their limbs in time to block the strikes, rather than kind of like your blocking is like teleporting into place, right? Normally a block is like you're in neutral, then suddenly as the move connects, their arms or whatever defensive position they go into, it snaps into that just by consequence of the gameplay. So it's really hard to tell like how this will actually look when the game is playable. They try to imply that the main trailers were real gameplay, but you never know how that's going to turn out. But it seemed like it was really well received, especially in the face of Clive in Tekken, where it's the most anime, over-the-top, huge-scale action. This is like a return to minimalism and basic fighting that seemed to be striking like a resonant chord with the community.
I mean, I think people are just looking for a new 3D fighting game to play, because like competition's always good no matter what. So like Tekken running amok right now, kind of just I'm in a chokehold to play Tekken if I want to play a 3D fighting game. So now you're gonna have more options. If I think Tekken's ass, and then they're like, oh well, now I have Virtual Fighter to play. So I guess that's going to be great for the community. But like I said, me personally, I'm not a Virtual Fighter player. I'm not a fan. I'm just not a fan. I like fighting it. I've tried every single fighting game. I've tried every single fighting game franchise, I think, at least once, and like Virtual Fighter did not stick with me at all.
It's okay for me, or understandable, I should say, for you to say that you don't really care about it, but to say I'm not a fan, like you disliked it?
No, I played it, and I remember playing it, and I think I played Virtual Fighter 5. I think Tekken 5 or 6 was out, and I was like, man, this is like, I'd rather be playing Tekken right now. I always do that for like most games I play, when I'm like, this is much more like this. I think this game is better. I'm gonna play this. So that's always kind of how I viewed video games in general. So yeah,
I'm sure that's everybody, and I'm sure that's why Tekken continued to make sequels year after year.
I'm part of the problem.
Virtual Fighter did it. Well, you're not part of the problem. That's super normal, right? I think Virtual Fighter's main criticism for many years was that, great game once you can actually internalize and comprehend all the mechanics and systems, and really get into the really deep depth of a high level gameplay it has to offer. But for the surface level, a lot of people just didn't vibe with it, or like it didn't really grab their attention to maintain it. I think was an issue towards the end of Virtual Fighter's entries into the series, right? So they did the re-release. Like, this was building for a little while. They did that re-release of Virtual Fighter 5, which I believe even included a balance update, or they actually put out a new balance update with the announcement of the next Virtual Fighter project. So they've been slowly making moves to try to pump some life into the franchise leading up to this announcement. And I got to dabble with it a little bit, because I think I had played Virtual Fighter 5 on the PlayStation, or Virtual Fighter on the PlayStation 1 like twice. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even recall really where I played it or who had the game. And I got to play it, but the most I did was like down one, just spam jab the entire time. And I beat actually like 75% of the players I played. I literally just mashed jab the entire time I played the game, and I was winning. And it was one of the most fun fighting game sessions I've ever had. That's probably my favorite video on my YouTube channel, is me just spamming jab in Virtua Fighter. And I got a lot of hate for that, actually. A lot of Virtua Fighter fanboys were pissed.
The elitists are probably like, you're not playing the game correctly or something like along.
Oh no, it got deranged. I'm talking full on like weird threats. It got weird, dude. Like there were some weird Virtua Fighter fanboys coming at me for mashing jab in Virtua Fighter. But I had fun with it, so I'll definitely try it, especially if they really actually managed to deliver on that aesthetic and actually make blocking look real time like that. I think it's cool. I think we're, myself included, it looked very refreshing to look at how simple and visually clear it was. Tekken is badass, Tekken is awesome, but it's going more and more and more into like the over the top anime direction, which is still cool. So I think there's room for something else. I think Virtua Fighter has found a good opportunity to come back and at this time as Tekken gets more extreme, right? It's like a return to basics. So I'll try it out. You won't match down 2 with me, Idom?
I mean, man, I guess if nothing, I don't know. Like I said, I've never been a virtual. I've been burnt by some bad fighting games in my day, but I guess I could try out Virtual Fighter again.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be another 6-month gap between Street Fighter DLC characters, so we can spare some time to mash around a little bit. Okay, I think that's a good time to close it out here. Any closing thoughts here, Idom, for the extra trashy listeners at home?
This one goes out to all the uncles, nephews, granddads working at Nintendo. Please announce the Switch 2 already.
Please announce the Switch 2 with Let's Fight by Capcom, the first customizable top-to-bottom fighting game with nothing Street Fighter related to it. I'm sure it's going to be a big hit. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Peace.